Welcome to CO556 Network Systems. This is the practical week exercise. This is week 3. This is a practical exercise for Packet Tracer. This is the configure router on a stick into VLAN routing exercise. We're just going to walk you through that exercise for this week. So here we have the Packet Tracer opened up with configure router on a stick into VLAN routing exercise ready to go. And we can see here in the instructions, we have the addressing table for our network that we've been given. And we have a set of objectives. So this is in 3 parts. So we have part 1, which is to add VLANs to a switch. And then we have part 2, which we'll configure some interfaces for the router on a stick. And then in part 3, we'll test connectivity with the inter-VLAN routing. The scenario is that in this activity, you will configure VLANs and inter-VLAN routing. You will enable trunk interfaces and verify connectivity between those VLANs. So we have our first part instruction. So part 1 is to add VLANs to a switch. So it asks us to create VLANs on S1. So it says create VLAN 10 and VLAN 30 on S1. Now notice here, as we start to get into these activities, these Packet Tracer activities, they don't give us the commands anymore for things that we've already covered. So last week we were looking at VLANs and we had the commands to create VLANs. So they assume now that we are able to create VLANs. We've been through those exercises. We understand the creation of VLANs. So they simply say create VLAN 10, create VLAN 30 on S1 here. So you're not given the commands. If you can't remember the creation commands for creating VLANs, then go back to the previous week. Go back to VLANs in week 2, and you'll be able to redo the exercises there to get familiar with those again and be able to use those commands correctly. So let's just minimize the instructions down. This is a network that they've given us to work with here. Oh, can't move things around. So we have R1 and we have S1 here. It's S1 that we want to work with. So let's go to S1 and straight into the command line, which I'll maximize up so we can see it a little bit more clearly. And there I am on user mode. So let's enable, and then we should go into configure terminal to get into the global configuration mode, and we need to create our VLAN. So we need to create VLAN 10 and VLAN 30. So simply a case of VLAN 10. And exit from the configuration, and then VLAN 30, and exit back. And that's it. So VLAN 10 and VLAN 30 are created on this switch, and again I can just check that by just doing my normal show VLAN brief command, and there we go. You can see how our 2 VLANs here. And I didn't say to give them a description or name or anything, so I haven't. We've just left them as VLAN 10 and VLAN 30 respectively here. So let's see what the next part of our instructions are. So let's have a look. Back to our little exercise. So it now says we need to assign VLANs to ports. So it says configure interfaces fast Ethernet 06 and fast Ethernet 11. So we've got to add them as access ports and assign VLAN. So assign the port connected to PC1 to VLAN 10, and assign the port connected to PC3 to VLAN 30. So PC1 VLAN 10 and PC3 VLAN 30. So that should be 6 and 11 effectively there, but we can just check that, double check that. So yeah, so 6 is for PC3 and 11 is for PC1. So PC1 is going to be VLAN 10 and VLAN 30 for 6. So these need to be access ports on switch 1 here. So let's go again to command line for switch 1. And again, I'll go into the global configuration mode, so configure terminal. So let's visit our interfaces. So let's go to fast Ethernet 11 first. 0/11, and this is going to be for PC1. So let's put that in. First of all, we need to put that into the access mode. So switch port mode access, and then switch port access, and that's going to be an access port for VLAN 10. And then we can exit that, and then we can just go to fast Ethernet 6 PC 3, and again we can do switch port mode access to put it in the access mode, and we need switch port access for VLAN 30 on this one. And again, if I do end and do VLAN brief, there we go. We can see that we have the VLAN 10 and VLAN 30 and the respective ports there. So 11, 1, and 6 for PC3. And again, if I just show the diagram, hopefully that's right. So 11 PC1. There we go. That's good. So that bit's done. So let's go back to our instructions here. So we've done step 2A. Now we need to do step 2B. So it says show VLAN. Oh, we've done this as well. So we've just shown that. So we've actually had a look at those. So yep, that makes sense. So we're on to step 3, essentially. So let's see what we've got here. So from PC1, let's ping PC3. Were the pings successful? Why did you get this result? Well, they're not going to be successful because PC1 and PC3 are currently on different VLANs, and you can't route between VLANs, so the ping is not going to be successful at the moment because we haven't got anything set up to actually do that routing. So we could just try that just to confirm that's the case. So going from if we go from PC1 and we want to ping 172.17.30, and what's the machine over here? Let's just make sure we got the 10, so 30.10. Okay, so let's just ping that one. So ping 172.17 .30.10, and we shouldn't get any replies from it because there's nothing set up here for the routing part yet. So we're just getting requests timeout, and they'll start to pop. There we go. So we're timing out on that. So that's not going to work because we're in two different VLANs. We haven't got any into VLAN routing yet. So that's what they're just demonstrating, that we haven't set that up. So let's go back to the exercise. And that's just ones. There we go, the exercise here. So let's have a look. So what's next to do? So now we're going to configure sub interfaces. So this is the routing bit. So we're going to configure sub interfaces on R1 using the 802.1q encapsulation. So we're going to create an interface for VLAN 10, and we're going to create a sub interface on gigabit Ethernet 00. For 10. So we set the encapsulation type to 802.1q, and we assign VLAN 10 to the sub interface, and we can refer to our addressing table and assign the correct IP address to the sub interface. So what they're doing here is they're giving us commands now, because these are new commands that we've only just encountering this week. So we've only just started to learn about inter-VLAN routing, and these are the commands that we learned from the presentation. So going to the interface, creating the sub interface, putting encapsulation on it, and assigning our IP addressing here. And we're going to do the same for .30 as well. So let's do that. So okay, so let's bring up our diagram, and we'll go to R1's command line and console, and assume we're on console port. So terminal. Okay, so interface. Yep. And we want fast Ethernet 0/. Oh no, not fast Ethernet. Sorry, this is gigabit Ethernet, isn't it? So it's gigabit Ethernet 0/0, and we want to create a sub interface. So to create a sub interface, just the dot, and we're going to create a sub interface for 10. VLAN 10. So we match the sub interface numbers with the VLANs, just so we don't forget them. So there we go. So now notice it says sub if. So sub interface, configuration for sub interface. Yeah. So we just treat it like a normal physical interface. We have to put the encapsulation on. So encapsulation for the dot 2.1q encapsulation, and the tag that we want to add is for VLAN 10. And then we need to give it an IP address, and we're just using the first address within the same network subnet as PC here. So that's 172.17. Oops, 17.10.1. So the first address there. So that's 255.255.255.0/24 subnet mask. And then we can exit that one. And let's just go and create the other sub interface. So up arrow to a little bit, just speed up things. So we can create one for 30. And on the sub interface, we need to do the encapsulation for 30 VLAN. And the IP address for this one is the same, but 172.17.30. There we go. And let's exit from that. And of course, we need to make sure that that physical interface is actually up and running. So let's go to the physical interface itself. So interface gigabit Ethernet 0/0, and just issue a no shut down on that one. Just bring that up. And you notice here it's in the little messages that come up. It tells us the line protocol interface gigabit 0/0 is up, and then it says that the sub interface is also coming up as well. So 10 and 30 there also change state to up at the same time. So you had to activate the had to bring the physical port out of shutdown in order to initiate the sub interfaces being out shut down as well. Okay. So let's go back to our instructions now, and it'll exercise, see what else they want us to do. So verify the configuration. So use show IP interface brief command to verify sub interface configuration. Both sub interfaces down. Oh yeah. Yeah, so we've just done the step that I just did automatically. So enabling that interface verify they are now active. So okay, we could verify those. So show IP interface brief is useful. So let's just do that. It's good to do all the steps here. So let's verify those interfaces are now indeed up and running. So if I end to go back to use exec, And let's do show IP interface brief. There we go. We can see the sub interfaces here, and they're all up, and the protocol's up. Yeah, so they're all running fine as we knew. So good. Okay. So what's next? So next part 3, then let's test our connectivity with inter-VLAN routing. So we should now be able to ping between PC1 and PC3, but it says the ping should still fail. And why is that? So why are those pings going to fail? Well, it's fairly obvious, but let's see if you can think about that for a minute. So we've just configured R1 here. We've got our sub interfaces, we've got our trunking for those sub interfaces. Everything is good here. These two PCs are on access ports for VLAN 10 and VLAN 30 respectively. So that's all good. Let's just see it failing. So reping from PC1. Now why is it failing? There we go, timing out. Obviously you always get a timeout on the first one, so we'll let it go to the second one just to, yeah, there we go. So why is it failing? Well, the reason it's failing is, and this is fairly obvious, you may have already got it, we haven't done the trunking. There is no trunk currently on S1 here. We've forgotten to, or we haven't forgotten, we just haven't got it. We haven't trunked here. So you need a trunk link between your switch and your router on the stick. So this has to be put into this port here, gigabit Ethernet 01 on the switch is going to need to be a trunk port. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to pass the VLAN traffic up and down between itself and the router. So this is not a trunk link yet. That's the only reason this is failing. So the switch is the router's good. We've set that up correctly. We've set up their access ports for our PCs, but we haven't done the trunk that's going to carry the traffic backwards and forwards between those two VLANs here. So I suspect that's the next thing. So let's have a go back to our instructions. So enable trunking is the thing we need to do next. So it says on S1 issue the show VLAN command. What VLAN is the gigabit Ethernet 01 currently assigned to, and it says because the router is configured multiple sub interfaces assigned to different VLANs, the switch port connected to the router must be configured to as a trunk. Enable trunking on interface gigabit Ethernet 01. How can you determine the interface is a trunk port using the show VLAN command? So let's go and do that one. So we go back to S1. Oops. Up a little bit. Okay, so let's enable that one. Oops. So configure terminal. And let's have a look at just making that into a trunk link. So let's go to interface gigabit Ethernet 0/1, and let's put it into switch port mode trunk. So let's just go and in that let's just show VLAN. So one of the ways we know that this is actually a gigabit Ethernet 01 is a trunk now is because it is no longer appearing in the list of ports. So if you look at the ports here, we've got everything apart from gigabit Ethernet 01. That's no longer in this show VLAN area. So using show VLAN, we can see what's a trunk link because it just won't appear here in the list of available ports. Any ports of the trunk won't appear there. So that's a surefire way to know that we've got some trunking going on that particular interface. So, okay. So that's how we determine using the show VLAN command. Show interface trunk command to verify that the interface is configured as trunk. Yeah, so show interface trunk is much more direct. Show interface rather than direct. Trunk. So here we can see that Gigabit Ethernet 01 is set up as a trunk, and it will allow VLANs 1 to 1005 on it, and it tells us that currently in the management domain of it, 1, 10, and 30 are going to be using it, and then spanning tree forwarding state. So, so we can see that this is a trunk here for Gigabit Ethernet 01, or rather, Gigabit Ethernet 01 is our trunk on this particular switch. So that just verifies it with show interface trunk. So let's see what else we've got to finish off on. So done that one. Test connectivity. If the configurations are correct, PC1 and PC3 should be able to ping to the default gateways and each other. What addresses do PC1 and PC3 use as default gateway addresses? Okay, so let's just have a look at that just to make sure we've got a ping going on there. Let's just quickly ping from PC1 to PC3 again. Well, the first one times that because it just learns the route, but then after that we're working. So now we're able to ping between VLAN 10 and VLAN 3 via our router on a SFIC configuration there. So that's good. And default, asked about the default configuration. So this is using let's have a look. So here, default gateway 172.17.10.1. Of course, that's the sub interface we set up for the 10 VLAN. And on PC3 it should have the should have the configuration for 172.17.30.1. Yeah, so they're both using the default sub interfaces set up on that physical interface Gigabit Ethernet 00 on the router 1. And that's it. So that exercise is complete.